Today we're taking a look at this leafy fringe, and this is a really great dramatic way to finish off a project. Each of these leaves are crocheted separately, and then they're joined all together with these chains, and it's joined right onto your scarf or whatever it is you're working on. So I'm going to walk you through how to make these great leaves step by step. Let's put that aside, and I've got my chain already begun. So I'm beginning my leaf with a chain 13. And remember, when you're working into your chain, not to count the loop on your hook. I'm going to miss or skip the first chain and work 1 SC into the second chain from my hook, and then 1 SC in each of the chains to my last chain. It's important for this particular pattern to make sure that you're working into just one side of your foundation chain. Sometimes people like to work into the chain differently, but if I take a look at my chain right here, that looks like a braid. I'm working into the top, so I'm inserting my hook into the middle, and I'm just using that top loop because we're going to need the bottom loop as we go around. So I'll show you that when we get there. So I'm working 1 SC into each chain until I get to the last chain. So at my last chain, I'm going to work 3 SC in that last chain. There's 1, 2, 3. And this is going to be the end of our leaf. This would be where like a stem would be on a leaf. And I need to mark the center stitch of those 3 SCs for future reference. So I'm just going to use a paper clip. Now you can use anything that's going to insert into the stitch and can be removed later. So you can get fancy stitch markers. There's lots of really nice ones out on the market. But a paper clip works just fine. I'm just going to bend this open piece out a little bit and stick it right through the stitch where I would insert my hook if I were to work a stitch into there. So safety pin, paper clip, whatever you have on hand. So I've marked my center stitch. Now I'm going to turn my work around so it's turning upside down. And then I'm going to work SC stitches all the way across into these remaining loops of the foundation chain. So we're making sort of a narrow U shape here. And you need 3 SC in that last chain just to be able to turn around the corner. You need a little extra space. Okay, and now I've come to my last chain, and that's it for the first row of our leaf. Now for the second row, I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to begin with a chain 1, that's my turning chain, and I'm going to skip the first SC. Normally you would work right into that first stitch, but this is a design feature of this particular pattern. We're skipping the first SC so that we don't get a really square corner here. So I'm skipping the first SC, and actually I'm going to work this row into the back loops of each SC. I'm going to work 1 SC in each of the next SC, working in the back loops only until I get to my marked stitch. So if you've never worked into the back loops of a crochet stitch before, if I turn this, you can see I've got, that's the chain formation at the top of my stitches, and normally you'd be working into both of those loops. So you'd work right under what looks like that braid. So the loop that's closest to me, that's facing you, is the front loop. And the one closest to the back of the work is the back loop. And you can work into either of those. So for this particular pattern, we're gonna work into the back loop. I'm skipping my first SC and I'm gonna work into the back loop of the second. So that's this one right here. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm just gonna work an SC. And I'm gonna continue working in just those back loops all the way along. And this is a technique that's often used in crochet to create ridges, because that loop that we haven't worked into the front is going to be visible in between our rows. So it's a really nice little design feature. And sometimes we're working into the back or front loop because other stitches will be worked into those remaining loops. But for this particular one, we're just doing this to create a ridge as a design feature on our leaf. So I'm working one single crochet in the back loop of each of the single crochets in my previous row until I get to that marked stitch. So now you can see why you need something that's removable, because I'm going to take this marker, this paper clip, out of my marked center stitch, and I'm going to work 3 SCs into the back loop of that center stitch. So we're marking this just to avoid having to count stitches. You just keep working till you get to the marked stitch and you don't have to count anything. And I'm going to mark the center stitch again of this 3DC or 3SC group. It doesn't really matter where you put the marker, as long as you can clearly tell when you're coming back around that that's your center stitch. Then I'm going to work 1 SC in the back loop only until I get to the last 3 SC. I think I've got one more to work here, yes. And then the last 3 SC I've got there, I'm just going to leave those unworked because we're forming the jagged edges of those leaves. So you can see now at the end of row 2 that I've got this ridge, and those are the remaining front loops that I didn't work my stitches into. So that's it for our second row. I'm going to turn the work for the third row. And the third, fourth, and fifth rows are all the same as that second row. So I'm going to start that again. I'm going to chain 1, skip my first SC, and work into the back loops only of each SC. I'm going to work 1 SC in the back loop only of each SC until I get to that center marked stitch. And then when I get to the center marked stitch, I'm going to remove my marker, work 3 SC, still continuing to work in the back loops for the rest of this leaf. We're only working into the back loops. So 3 SC, I'm going to mark my center stitch again, so I don't have to count on my next row. And then work 1 SC in the back loop of each of the SCs until I get to the last 3 SC. I've got 3 left. I'm going to leave that and turn to work my next row. So the next 2 rows are exactly the same. So once you've worked all 5 rows of the leaf pattern, you're going to have something that looks like this. I've got 3 here ready to go. I've woven in the ends, and I've left this marker on the center stitch. Now you don't need to do that if you're confident that you can find that center stitch, but if you'd like to, keep that stitch marker in there because that's where we're going to join our leaves to our fringe. So to join, I've just worked a chain 28 here, and then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that center marked stitch of my leaf. So I'm just going to remove that marker, insert my hook in there, let's get my yarn in position, and then I'm going to make a slip stitch. So just drawing yarn through that stitch and through the chain. Now I'm going to work a slip stitch in each of the chains of my chain 28. So in this case, I don't need to work into the second chain because I'm not working in a C or any other kind of stitch. It's just a slip stitch. So I don't need to skip anything. I'm just going to work into the very first chain a slip stitch. There's a couple reasons that we're working slip stitches. One is that we want to get to the end of this chain, the opposite end of this chain, without having to cut the yarn. So the less tails to weave in at the end of your project, the better, right? And then the other reason we're doing this is to strengthen this chain. We're making it a little thicker. You can see all those slip stitches are making this a little wider and a little thicker to support that leaf. So when I get to the end of that, that's my row 1. Now I'm going to, for my second row, chain 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And be careful you don't pick up that tail from the beginning of your chain. Make sure you're still working with your working yarn that's attached to the ball. So I've chained 16, and now I'm going to join with a slip stitch to my next leaf. So I've got another leaf ready here. And now there's a front and a back to this leaf. This is the front because I've got a ridge in the center here, but it really doesn't matter. They look pretty nice on each side. So I can see here I've got my 3 center stitches at the end of my leaf. I'm going to just insert my hook into the middle of those 3. I like to have the chain over to the right there to work my slip stitch, though it doesn't really matter. It's just easier to see. And then when I've joined with a slip stitch, I'm going to slip stitch in each of the next 14 chains. Let me just get my yarn in order here. Now you remember for this row we chained 16 at the beginning, and I'm just working into the first 14. That remaining 2 chains is going to be the chain that separates our 2 leaves, or our 2 fringes, if you will. So you need that 2 chains to have some space in between the 2. Again, you can make that longer or shorter if you like. Our first chain was 28 and this one was 16. You can make them any length that you like. So I'm going to leave those 2 chains unworked, and that's what's going to separate the 2 leaves, my 2 leaf fringes. And you can see if I lie this down, they're going to fall at different lengths now. Now for the 3rd row, I'm just going to chain 6. And then I'm going to join my 3rd leaf. Again, if you'd like to consistently do it on the front, it doesn't really matter. I think it's going to look nice on both sides here. I'm going to find my center 3 stitches. If you had the marker there, you can just remove that. And I'm going to join with a slip stitch. And again, I'm going to work back across this chain slip stitches. And I'm just going to work 4 this time, so that I consistently have 2 chains unworked in between my leaves, or in between my slip stitch cords. And if you wanted to have them unevenly spaced, you could leave a different number of chains unworked. There's lots of different variations you can do with this, but now you can see with my long 28 chain, 16 chain, 6 chain, my leaves are falling at nice angles there. And when you're complete, you can make that with as many leaves as you like, for whatever width you need. And when you're finished, you can just sew that top portion. Sew the chain 2 spaces that are in between. You can sew that onto the base of a scarf, like the one we've got here. And you've got a great dramatic leafy fringe.